With the brilliance of your wisdom, O compassionate one, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind. Enlighten my intelligence and wisdom so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. So the following section here will actually be a repeat, simply for the sake of the recording, because during class I forgot to record this section. So I'm just, you could say, repeating the material while recording so that there will be a and B recording in relation to the material then, so that you could say we're covering all the topics that are relevant for today's study. So I'll just start quite simply, as I always do. I sort of put this in context. This is, of course, in the context of presently studying the paramita of wisdom, which is then cultivated through listening to the teaching, taking ownership of what is being taught, not as something we blindly accept, but through critical thinking. But it is what we call the wisdom through practice of reflection. And once these two are in place, having heard what the Buddha has to say and also understood what it means in terms of our personal experience, what leads to confusion, what leads to wisdom, then we engage in the final manner of cultivating wisdom, which is then the practice of meditation. But to practice meditation, we first need a view. And that's where we've studied the different ways in which the view, as you could say, an understanding of reality is established. And this we do through studying the various approaches to understanding reality that is known as the tenet systems, Trungtao Siddhanta. And that's where we've looked at the Vibhashika, Sutrantika, Yogacarya, and particularly the Madhyamika. And that's where within the Madhyamika you have two ways of understanding approaching the understanding of reality. One is according to the Svatantrika, which is a more gradual approach, understanding the nature of relative truth and also absolute truth, ultimate truth. And then you have the Prasangika that understand, you could say, the relative truth, but don't really philosophize about it, and simply are more interested in introducing absolute truth through exposing the flaw of trying to conceptualize the absolute nature. And that's where one talks about essentially refuting what we call ontological extremes, rigid belief systems that hold on to a particular idea about reality. So for us to engage the freedom from conceptual constructs altogether, we need to first be clear on how we habitually latch on to assumptions about reality, and how these also are some of these assumptions are also further fueled by culturally generated assumptions, belief in our particular science of various kinds. So whether it's science or philosophy or religion or whatever, the absolute nature will never be understood through concepts. So that's where, to free ourselves entirely from these filters of concepts, we then have the Prasangika that basically their only project is really just to refute assumptions about reality. So there in the root text, then Jigme Lingpa says, all things that may appear and are imagined by the mind as what can be expressed and spoken of and thought are posited as relative, the all-concealing truth. The union of the two truths is beyond both realized and realized. No one can experience it in such a way. So that's where the ultimate nature is very different from the all-concealing truth, the appearances that we have, that we think of in terms of having more solidity than just their mere appearance. And that's where the Buddha points out all we have is really just a web of causes and conditions that create appearances. But there is no reality to this. And that's where we talk about relative truth in terms of the all-concealing truth. the appearances that appear to be solid, but actually they conceal their empty nature. And to be free from any constructs about subject and object and so on, is then the approach of the Prasangika, to go beyond the notions of both, even the notion of ultimate truth, to go beyond the notions of relative and ultimate truth. You could say reality itself is not in any way constructed on the basis of these kind of conceptual constructs. So that's where we would say these notion of subject, object, realizer and realized and so on are artificial constructs, and the ultimate nature cannot be experienced as in that manner. So Kangyur Rinpoche comments then, as the great upholders of Prasangika doctrine have shown, the ultimate aim of practice is the fundamental condition of phenomena. This is the Dhammadhatu, which is by nature beyond all conceptual constructs. It is unspeakable, unthinkable, and impossible to convey. So this is also where we have this famous praise by the Buddha's son, Rahula, where he praises the great mother, the Dhammadhatu, and says beyond thought, beyond language, beyond expression, unborn and unceasing, like the nature of the sky. This is the object of individual wisdom. I bow to the mother of all the Buddhas, referring to the Dhammadhatu, referring to this insight. So it says, it is peaceful serenity, the absence of all conceptual construction, the ultimate absolute truth. It is unobstructed, its unobstructed created power is displayed as the dependent arising of phenomena. And it is this that the mind and its mental factors interpret, or rather misinterpret, as something that can be verbally expressed, mentally conceived, and demonstrated. So within this ultimate nature, yes, there is display. We're not talking about some vacuous, empty space, but we're talking about how the Dhammadhatu, which is endowed with it's the unobstructed created power appearances, that this is simply just dependently arisen phenomena that never ever moves from being just that. And yet the confused subjective mind that sees this as an object and thinks of itself as a subject, interprets this as things that can be classified, conceptualized, and so forth, objectified. So Kangyur Rinpoche says, phenomena that arise unobstructedly and according to imputation are described as the relative truth. If in meditation one settles in a spacious state free from thoughts, and if in post-meditation period one unremittingly accumulates merit on the understanding that all is like an illusion, one will avoid falling one-sidedly into one or another of the two truths. So that's where if we understand dependent arising, then also we understand how in meditation we simply settle in a state without objectifying or fixating on whatever arises, what we call the samadhi of non-thought. And then if we then also combine that with post-meditation practice, where we still understand that phenomena don't have any reality, and yet on the basis of relative truth, we then accumulate merit, the conditions for, you can say, conducive experiences that will lead us to awakening. In that way, we both connect with the ultimate in meditation and also in relative truth, post-meditation. We also accumulate merit. This is what we talk about as the two indispensable aspects of the path, which is the accumulation of wisdom, the accumulation of merit. So when we do that, then we would say, even in post-meditation, when appearances arise, it will be impossible to stir from the fundamental mode of phenomena, meaning we won't get confused by appearances. We know their empty nature. And conversely, even when one rests in meditation, in a state free from conceptual constructs, such an emptiness will not be a state of mere nothingness. We're not just settling down into a blank, vacuous state. At all times, the two truths are united and inseparable. This is the nature of the Dharma Dhatu, beyond all duality, imputed by the ordinary intellect, beyond the division of an object realized and a mind that realizes. So this is settling into non-duality. It is impossible for anyone to experience it in the manner of a knowledge object. So this understanding is not divided into somebody who knows something like a piece of information. There's no difference between the one experiencing and that which is experienced. The Dhamma Dhatu is, of course, invisible to the referential dualistic view. It is not at all as though something is newly attained that had not been present before. It's like when we talk about Buddha nature. It's not something that all of a sudden we didn't have before. And it's not something that's made up, perfected through the laborious following of the path. It's not a construct. Even those who fail to accomplish the path and who remain in ordinariness do not, for that reason, lose it. For in the natural condition of the ultimate nature, attainment is not good and non-attainment is not bad. They are perfectly equal. So we would understand that the nature of reality itself is in no way something that is carries concepts which uniquely is constructed by the subject, ourselves, such as this is good, this is bad. Nature itself is untouched by these kind of labels. They are equal. Whether there's confusion or non-confusion, the nature itself doesn't change. Dwelling in emptiness, the ultimate nature, means that the mind is attuned to emptiness and all clinging to ontological extremes is exhausted. So we don't hold on to emptiness as something to be held, but it's merely just that we're attuned to it. We understand the nature of reality and we don't generate further confusion. That is the quality then of the path that enables us to align ourselves with the reality of what is. It says subject and object blend into one taste. Like salt dissolving in water, the mind and the ultimate nature are not distinct. This is what is correctly designated as the realization of emptiness and the gaining of the result. So this is then how we understand the object or the purpose of the path. This is what we're aiming for. Simply dissolving confusion and being able to fully manifest and realize this realization. And there's a quote from Kangyur Rinpoche who says, Chandrakirti says, when a state of mind attuned to emptiness becomes manifest, this is referred to as the realization of emptiness. But it does not mean that emptiness is realized as an object. So again, it's not a piece of information, but it's simply just that we're no longer caught in the confused projections. And that's where we connect with the nature of things as they are. We align ourselves, we attune ourselves. And when this becomes fully, you could say, realized or fully manifest, that's referred to as realization of emptiness. So now follows the wisdom resulting from reflection. So please proceed to the second part of this video from here.